Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. For any of you out there who want to jump on the wagon for a new way to earn money when you happen to have maybe an extra home or room or perhaps a condominium out there, maybe you're considering an Airbnb. The question is, though, is how can you go about getting something like this started and ensure that that particular investment that you make is actually going to spin off the kind of income that you would like, being successful, that is. On the program today, we're going to be listening to someone who has more than 5 years of experience from what she likes about hosting to the challenges that are involved in an Airbnb, and is also offered as a coach to help anyone who wants to get started in the Airbnb business. She runs the Slater House with her husband, Fred, in Southeast Portland, and we're welcoming to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Kim Gordon-Cumbo. Kim, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, let's talk about how you started hosting and why you got started hosting, say, an Airbnb.
Well, in 2011, we knew my stepson, my husband's son, was going to be graduating school and directly going to college. And we have a 4-bedroom, 2.5 historic home in last edition. And we're like, well, what are we going to do with all this space? And we thought about getting roommates, but we both had roommates in the past, and some of those experiences had not been the best. And we were both working full-time. And I had heard about Airbnb in 2010 and then mentioned it to my husband in 2011. And so we had sort of decided that after Miles went to the U of O that we would start working on becoming an Airbnb. But the first thing we did was we made a trip to Ashland and stayed in our first Airbnb with our lovely host, Cindy, who agreed to let us take her out to dinner and pick her brains about being a host and how she became a host and what she liked and what the challenges were. And so we got to experience firsthand becoming a guest at an Airbnb. We got to experience the setup of the Airbnb, the registration process, the payment, the greeting from the host and how she welcomed us. And so for us, it was just very important to know the ins and outs of what we were getting into before we even started. So that's how we got started. And then a month and a half later, after we had rehabbed our one room with some difficulty, we opened on my sister's birthday, October 18th, and hosted our first guests, who were a couple with a 2-month-old baby. And it was a lovely experience. I brought down the cradle from the attic that I had put my babies in, and they had a great time, and we had a great time with them, and it was so much fun. We're like, okay, this was the right decision.
Now, for those out there who may not be familiar with what Airbnb is, what exactly happens? What is the process as far as, do people stay in your place and you're not there? I mean, what goes on with this?
Well, it pretty much is determined by the individual host because for us, we're what I call a traditional Airbnb, which is people stay in our home. All of the bedrooms are on the same floor, including our bedroom. And so we share our home with our guests. They have their own bathroom. But other hosts have a basement that they have rehabbed that's called an alternative dwelling unit or an ADU. And then, as you probably know, the explosion of ADUs in Portland or the tiny house movement, all those can be Airbnbs. And some hosts are on site and some hosts are off site. Other hosts contract with agencies or other businesses to co-host for them. So it really depends on the host and their style of Airbnb.
Now, when it comes to starting all this, what would you say was the biggest challenge you faced, or set of challenges people should be aware of when it comes to starting to host something like this?
Well, I think beyond rehabbing a room, which we found black mold under the wallpaper, and so then had to get a replastering. So the first challenge was just getting the room and the space ready. But for me, we were both working full time, and in 2012, the expectations of the guests were different than they are now. We had older guests who were more expecting just a cheap bed and breakfast, and that was a little bit challenging. So we had to continually kind of rewrite our profile so that people could manage their expectations. So those two were the biggest kind of challenges that we had in starting out.
Now, when you say writing a profile, I would suppose this would be the same way as advertising or listing. So let's talk about what that is.
Okay. On Airbnb, you have different components to the listing. You have the description of the home, the description of the neighborhood. Then you have your hosting profile. And the hosting profile is one of the key elements to your listing. And what I have found is that people will stay with us because of our host profile. Fred plays jazz and is energy conservation and gardens. I used to be a midwife, and I'm a Reiki master as well. So people are attracted to our listing because they kind of feel like-minded, because they have a picture of who we are. We are getting ready to go to Ireland next month, and we spent last weekend booking our Airbnbs. And what I found was that a lot of hosts do not write very much about themselves. And when you don't have a good sense of who the host is, it makes you a little more uncomfortable. So the hosting profile is something that I have a specific training for, simply because it's so important, and also host pictures. So that's one part. The other part is the listing itself, talking about expectations of the guests, like interactions with the guests. Our interactions, we put in our profile that if our schedules allow us and if the guest schedule allow, we're happy to chat. So we give the guests their own space and they give us space. Other hosts who host on Airbnb may not have that availability, or they may not be on site. And so that sort of information needs to be in the listing profile so that the guests know what to expect. Now, because we have a historic home and our bedrooms are on the second floor, I make sure to mention the floors because we offer a continental breakfast and we are also gluten-free. I put that in the listing as well. So we get a fair number of celiac people who come to stay with us because we do have gluten-free options for them. The one thing that we've noticed in the last year is almost, not all, but hosts don't have breakfast or offer any kind of food. And so that's the one thing we hear from our guests time and again, that, even a piece of fruit and a cup of coffee is really nice. So that goes into the listing. So you're really trying to paint a picture of what the experience is going to be like in the listing. And then the third component of the listing is house rules, or what I call boundaries. And this is where a lot of I get clients is in this area. They start hosting and then they start having challenges with guests. And so we take a look at their house rules and create a little more clear boundaries for the guests. So with the profile, there's more to it than that. There's the amenities, but these are more like little check boxes of what you're going to offer, whether you have an ironing board, that sort of thing. But the host profile, the listing, and the house rules or boundaries are the three big components that I spend a lot of time with my clients on.
So it sounds like a typical guest for you is somebody who would be gluten-free. What are some other things that seem to be typical for the guests that come to stay in your home?
Well, we get a wide range, but seasonally, in the spring and summer, we tend to have more European, Australian, New Zealand, and Asian vacationers. And for the most part, they're doing like a tour of the Pacific Northwest. And then, of course, we have a generous mix of Californians and Canadians and the East Coasters who are experiencing the Pacific Northwest for the first time. And then we have people coming for job interviews, grandparents coming to see new babies, parents coming to see their kids who are now attending university in Portland. So we don't really have a typical profile, but we do tend to get a lot of people just experiencing Portland. Like right now we have 2 people who are wrapping up a 3-week tour of the Pacific Northwest starting in Canada, and they're going down to San Francisco. And his reason for being here is to experience a wide variety of food. And then we have another guest who is just here to explore nature around Portland. So people come for a wide variety of reasons.
Sounds that way, too. Sounds very exciting, definitely. What's one of the best experiences or great guest experience that you had that stands out the most for you?
Well, let's see. We have one guest whose daughter started attending Portland State University a few years ago, and so he comes a couple times a year, James, and he's a very interesting fellow. He's a yacht captain for part of his life, and so he moves other people's yachts from port to port. And then he's also a Lincoln Continental salesman in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he tells fantastic stories. We laugh a lot. We usually drink at least one bottle of wine on the back porch or the front porch when he's here. And so some of our guests are just so personable, and I've made several good friends. Susan Weber is an artist. Her husband's a professor in Spain, and so they travel a lot. And that's been really fun. And let's see. I don't know. We had one couple who it was their last weekend away before their baby was going to come, and he was petrified of being at the birth. And because I used to be a midwife and a former childbirth educator, I said, "Do you want a childbirth class?" And he's like, "Yes, please." And he said, "Yeah, otherwise I'm going into the delivery room with my motorcycle helmet on because I'm sure I'm going to pass out." And they were just so cute. And so I gave him the class, and then I got an email from her a few weeks later and said, "Guess what? He didn't pass out, and he didn't wear his helmet, and he did just great. Thank you so much for the class." So those are a couple experiences that stand out. But generally, we get really, really fun and pleasant guests.
Well, it sounds like, and I think that's the ideal that a lot of people, when they consider pursuing this, have in mind that it's going to, just per se, turn up roses. It's all going to work well. But I'm sure there's probably some pretty big challenges people should consider, too, especially when it comes to guests. Have you ever had anything like that, or would you say that your profile kind of helps filter that sort of thing out?
Well, I'd have to say, Daniel, at the beginning we had more concerns around that, and that's how I learned how to word our profile so that people knew what to expect. We had one couple schedule with us when I was going to be out of town, and so Fred was going to be their host, and they were not very happy. They had called me because we have a website. They had called me from the website, and they weren't very happy about making an Airbnb profile. And so they arrived, and I love my husband dearly, but he decided to start a little home project. which was removing the wallpaper from the foyer while I was gone to surprise me. So they came in, and they went up to their room, and Fred toured them in the house, and then he went outside the garden, and within 20 minutes they had packed up and left. And because I monitor, even when I'm gone, I monitor the Airbnb message boards, they had let me know that they wanted their money back and they weren't going to stay because there wasn't a TV in their room. And at the time, it was fall, and it was a cool fall, so we didn't have an air conditioner, but they wanted one anyway. So in that moment I called Airbnb customer service. And so I started learning right away how important it is to use customer service with Airbnb. And granted, not every rep is as knowledgeable. I mean, they're not all knowledgeable about everything. But I worked with Airbnb to refund them most of their money except for the one night that we would lose income on because we wouldn't be able to fill that room. And the couple left. I would not say they were a happy couple. They had very high expectations, and so that was a challenge. Most definitely, that was a disappointing challenge. But I learned a lot from it. So.
Well, you say something that I think is important for our guests to really hone in on, and that is what a guest expectation is. And
Right.
I can see how they might have expectations. I wouldn't consider them to be unreasonable, but, a guest, I think, sometimes perhaps thinks of a hotel stay.
Mm-hmm.
And do you say that would be one of those areas where they can get mixed up about what this particular experience is versus, say, a hotel stay?
Right. Yeah. Most definitely. What I've learned through comments from our guests, because whenever a guest leaves, I always try to be here and ask them if there was anything that we could have done to make their stay better. And so we've learned. TVs was one thing, and we don't have a functioning TV in our house, so we weren't going to put them in the guest rooms. And then the other thing was fluffy towels. We learned really quickly that even though we provided organic, natural cotton towels, that most guests wanted fluffy towels, so we bought fluffy towels. And so, yes, expectations is definitely something that I work with all the time in our listing profile. And then there's two ways to book with Airbnb. You can place an inquiry with a host, which is a no commitment. It just says that you expressed interest but want more information. And then you can instant book, and we use both ways. And, some hosts don't like the instant book because they just feel uncomfortable with it. I can't speak for other hosts, but so I send our instant book guests and our guests who are querying us kind of a what you should know email so that they know that we are a working household. We've lived in Portland for 35 years. We've got a historic home. We are nice, but we're not fancy. We serve a continental self-serve breakfast. We have quiet hours from 10:30 to 6:30. And we have stairs so that people understand that just what to expect. And let's see, what are some of the other things? Oh, and that they will more than likely be sharing a bathroom with another guest. And so then I ask for a response. And this year I haven't had anybody respond saying that they needed to change their booking. Last year I had 4 people respond saying that we were not a good fit. Because what we also find is a lot of guests are looking for one thing. They're looking for the price, they're looking for the location, they're looking for the neighborhood. And they don't really look at anything else. A lot of people don't read the house rules or very much about the listing. They look at the pictures, the price, the location. And so I found that this has helped to make our guests a lot happier when they stay here, and we are also happier hosts.
Now, Kim, tell me what you like most about hosting an Airbnb.
I like the variety of people, and I like hearing their stories. We've had authors, musicians, scientists, professors, climate change engineers, grandparents, newlyweds, photographers. We've had sorority sisters, frat brothers, mother-daughter pairs, and then just guests who are touring the world. And so we hear so many different types of stories that is what it really makes it fun for us. And plus it's really fun to hear how much people like Portland, love Portland. I had one gal a couple months ago, young gal, about 23, and she was looking for a university, and she's like, I told my mom I want to move to Portland. And it was during that stretch of weather when it was like 80 to 85. It was beautiful. Everything's flowering and blossoming. And she's like, I told my mom I'm going to move here. It's so beautiful here. I'm like, okay, it's so green. Why it's so green? Because it rains. It rains a fair amount. You're getting the good season. And she's like, really? So it's really fun to see and hear people's enthusiasm for Portland. It's fun and to hear what people are doing. We have quite a few people who are doing really powerful things, like this couple here, this Booty couple that I was telling you about. She's a professor for a medical device company, and she's creating a program to help the students of this medical device learn the best way that they know how. And we had a wonderful lady a couple months ago who's written a book of poetry about her travels in Italy. So it's just fun. We get a great amount of people doing great things.
Now, tell me what particular challenges have people who stay with you ask for help?
Oh, you mean guests?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we ask for help. We had one fellow from Ireland a year ago during the ice storm who got an inner ear infection, and so he got dizzy and was ill, and so we helped him to get to urgent care. And then he was studying at the Mitripa College, which is only a block and a half from our house. And so we helped him. He did not want a car ride. We helped him get to his college safely. We help people as concierges all the time. I'm in the midst of compiling, I wouldn't say it's a book yet, maybe it's an e-book, but activities, like a day in the life of Portland. What part of town do you want to do something in? And my guests are helping me to do this by writing what they do every day when they come for a visit. So concierge is a big thing that we do. And we provide a lot of support for people who don't know how to get around. We help people plan their TriMet bus trips or their trips out to the gorge to Noma Falls, that sort of thing.
Wow, sounds amazing. I was curious, too, when someone decides to host an Airbnb, what tip or tips would you offer to people like that who are thinking about getting started?
Well, I think the first thing is stay in an Airbnb. Just like we did. Go be a guest first. And I think that is one of the key things, because you're going to learn a lot about the process, the website, how the host hosts, and what I tell my clients is take notes about what you liked, what you change, what you copy. And a lot of times people don't realize that, it takes more effort than just Airbnb doing the marketing. We have our own website. We've got a Facebook business page. I do networking locally. I call universities. So it's really a small business. And I think that was the thing that, for me, I did not quite realize, was that it was a really small business, not just another little income stream. So you do lose a little bit of your freedom and spontaneity. But that's like with any job, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, I noticed on your website, the SlaterHousePDX.com, which we'll remind our listeners of before the show ends, is that you have host coaching. Tell us what that is.
Host coaching. I help hosts become successful sooner than later by helping them to avoid some of the challenges that Fred and I faced when we first started. So some of my clients come to me for help with the three areas that I talked about before: the host profile, the listing profile, and the house rules. I get a fair number of people for that. Then there are some people who are not familiar with the technology, and so I help them learn how to navigate the website. I show them how to download pictures. I provide resources for them to get professional photography done. It just really kind of depends what this particular client needs or wants. So at this point, I'm kind of tailor-making the coaching that I do. I am a certified and professional coach through the International Coach Federation, and in the past coached women through divorce. But I am finding that there is such a great need for host coaching. What I found was a lot of my networking friends wanted to open up Airbnbs, and so I started getting asked to help them. And that's kind of how I launched into this. And then on Facebook, Debbie Herder started our Portland area Airbnb hosts Facebook page, where hosts could write in their challenges and get feedback from other hosts. And so I found myself spending a fair amount of time every day giving feedback to people, and then people contacting me privately to get some assistance. And I've helped three very good friends go from beginning to opening their Airbnb all the way through from step one to the finished product, so to speak. And I have a class that I've developed, top 10 tips for success with Airbnb. And now I'm going to be holding a monthly class at the Sacred Money Studio and Prosperity Pie Shop in Multnomah for people who may not want coaching but would like the information.
Well, very good. Now, I know that a lot of us, when we get started in something and we start to feel, I guess, a modicum of success, kind of look back on when we first got started and realize, boy, if I'd only known then what I know now, what would that be for you?
Well, I think I mentioned that insofar as this being a small business. And the other thing is I probably myself should have asked for help a little sooner than I did. I've started working with a business coach to help me get a little more capable in doing my own accounting, because I was kind of just guesstimating what my expenses were for running the Airbnb. And so, I'm getting my own help in that realm. So asking for help sooner than later. And I think one other thing would be take some breaks, schedule in some breaks. We were so excited by our guests, and at the time, it was just exciting to have some more money coming in, that we scheduled ourselves too tightly so that we didn't really have a break from hosting. So that's the other thing that I would suggest to all hosts is, yes, you can be excited about hosting and meeting great people and making some extra money, but you do need to take care of yourself. You got to take care of the mothership.
Well, absolutely.
Otherwise,
If you're starting to have people get on your nerves and that comes through, pretty soon you're going to have people out there telling people, "Oh, these people aren't so nice to be around."
Exactly. And customer service is a huge thing in Airbnb. Customer service with communication. I worked for Starbucks for 6 years and Oregon Health Sciences University on the front lines with medical reception and medical assisting. And we got customer service training every year. And that's the one thing that I impart to my clients is, no matter how you interact with your guests, it's best to always put a smile on your face and in your voice, even if you may not totally feel that way at the time. And then when it comes to writing reviews for guests, my practice is firm, fair, and friendly. And that's how I try to interact with my guests, too, if I have to. If people are stomping up and down the stairs at 1 o'clock in the morning, contacting them, firmly, fairly, and friendly, and asking for something different. So customer service is a big one, too.
Yeah. Well, Kim, thank you so much for being on the program today and sharing this wonderful dynamic that people might want to, of course, pursue, or maybe they're in pursuit in doing it, and some things they should really consider. And I like how you talk about, although this may seem like a fun way to earn some extra money, that it's really a lot more than that it's really a business. And when you approach it from that way, then you'll probably have a lot more success than you will if you just think it's some cool part-time income talking with some really great people.
Right, exactly. Yeah. May I mention one more thing?
Absolutely.
Our nonprofit group, Host to Host, is a nonprofit for Airbnb hosts, and we're having a vendor fair October 20th, and this is open to the public so that you can learn more about Airbnb, Host to Host, and if you are interested in or are hosting, you can learn about products that will complement or assist you in hosting your Airbnb. And that's HOST, the number 2, HOST.org.
Very good. Kim, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me, Daniel.
You bet.
It was a pleasure.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. Again, if you happen to be staying at an Airbnb, tune into the Beyond 50 radio program. Visit us at beyond50radio.com as well. You can sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.